Valentina is from the village of Zaitsevo in eastern Ukraine. She's one of the few residents who decided to stay in her home when the fighting began in the country's east in 2014. Ahead of the summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, to be held on July 16th in Helsinki, where the leaders will discuss the conflict in Ukraine among other issues, Valentina hopes for progress towards peace.
We don't
need anything else. We don't want anything else but peace. We've suffered enough within the past 4 years. We've been shelled for 4 years. It's the 5th year already. Families split. It's the most painful issue for me. My children left, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren left. I can't see any of them. This is the most painful issue.
Numerous shell holes adorn a metal fence and plastic shields cover the windows in Valentina's house. They're all reminders of the conflict which has claimed more than 10,000 lives and of shelling which continues on an almost daily basis, despite the notional ceasefire that is part of the Minsk agreements.
I think this summit will certainly bring some consequences for Ukraine. But what consequences? We know that the World Cup is being held in Russia, and it probably became one of the reasons which led to some calm period here, and it still continues. This is one of the reasons. And I think that right after the World Cup finishes, this meeting between the Russian president and the President of the United States will focus on further development of the conflict in eastern Ukraine.
Kiev has counted on U.S. diplomatic and financial support in its standoff with Moscow since the annexation of Crimea and the outbreak of Russian-backed fighting in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, Moscow denies any sending of troops or arms to Ukraine's Donbass region. Ukraine fears that Trump, with his sometimes spontaneous style of doing diplomacy, may prove susceptible to Putin's efforts to win U.S. acceptance of Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea.
Putin wants one thing only. He wants Western world to recognize the occupation of Crimea de facto and leave Russia alone. They need to receive the message that the US is ready to live with it. I believe that Trump should not agree with that. Because if he does, all US allies around the world, Taiwan, South Korea, and Arab countries will receive very negative message that the US can give up its principles of freedom, democracy, and peace in the whole world.
Despite this, Ukraine hopes Trump will push Putin to scale back Moscow's flow of weapons and manpower into eastern Ukraine.